Greetings, citizens of the world. It was reported that moderate Syrian rebels that the United States is planning on arming and training to fight against ISIS, or IS, or ISIL, or whatever, have signed a non-aggression pact with none other than ISIS, or IS, or ISIL, or whatever. This is not new. The United States has been arming these very same rebels, even when they were openly aligned with ISIS and Al-Qaeda, for over a year. The United States was funding and arming these rebels, through Arab League proxies, while they slaughtered and razed some of the oldest Christian communities in the world.
But what are the potential downsides, the consequences of arming some of the moderate rebels in Syria? When we see reports like what happened just last week, that the Free Syrian Army was apparently participating in the abduction of 40-some UN peacekeepers in the Golan Heights. Are these the people that we want to start supplying with weapons?
Well, two different things, in the Ukraine and in Syria. Syria, we backed, I believe, in some cases, some of the wrong people, and not in the right part of the Free Syrian Army, and that's a little confusing to people. So I've always maintained, and go back quite some time, that we were backing the wrong types. I think it's going to turn out maybe this weekend in a new special that Bret Baier is going to have Friday that's going to show some of those weapons from Benghazi ended up in the hands of ISIS. So we helped build ISIS. Now there's a danger there, and I'm with you.
At that time, the United States turned a blind eye, because the goal was not to defeat ISIS, it was to overthrow Assad, so a few thousand dead Christians were not really a big deal. Then ISIS did the unimaginable. They threatened the United States and other Western oil interests in Erbil, Iraqi Kurdistan's oil hub. Then the bombing began. Yes. They lied to the public on their corrupt corporate-paid mainstream media, by saying they were going to save innocent Yazidis trapped on a mountain, which they curiously called Christians. All the while, the airstrikes were actually targeting militants that were on the verge of taking over Erbil's oil distribution hub. Barack Obama was on corrupt corporate-paid TV to announce his plans to arm these rebels, in his renewed war on terror, and lied when he said the United States rescued the Yazidis that were trapped on Mount Sinjar. They did not rescue the Yazidis, the Kurds did. Bombs do not rescue people. But it is nice and convenient to lie and say their bombs are helping people, and not killing them. Not only that, but the Yazidis are far from saved. Just ask one of them about their humanitarian efforts, and how well they are working. Oh, that's right, they are not working. The plight of the Yazidis, falsely labeled as Christians, was nothing more than a convenient rallying cry for Western war hawks, eager to protect oil interests, and start another perpetual war, over their failing geopolitical chess match with China and Russia. The war propaganda conveniently claims that the United States will defeat ISIS, or IS, or ISIL, or whatever, by arming the mythical moderate rebels in Syria. There is a few major flaws in this bogus rhetoric. Firstly, there are basically no moderate rebels left fighting in Syria. Even the mainstream Syrian rebels, better known as the Islamic Front, are Salafist militiamen, who would instill hardline Sharia law, if they won the war in Syria. We know this, because they are already doing it in the land that they currently control. The only difference between ISIS and the Islamic Front, is that ISIS is slightly more violent. Secondly, the moderate opposition to ISIS in Syria, just signed a non-aggression pact with them, meaning that they will now fight alongside each other, to topple Assad. So unless America and their war-hungry allies are planning on completely manufacturing new rebels from Syrian refugee camps in Turkey, they have no friends in the region. The guys they want to back, arm, and train, are fighting side by side with ISIS. This has not slowed down their march towards war, but we can still prevent Congress from funding this atrocity. The goal now is the same as it was last year: regime change in Syria, the toppling of the Assad government, and protecting some oil interests while they're at it. If you truly believe the United States is going to war with Iraq and Syria for humanitarian reasons, ask yourself why they were funding ISIS only a year ago while they slaughtered Christians. Why do they support the repressive Saudi regime? Why did they support dictators that oppress their people? Why did they overthrow peaceful governments in Libya, Guatemala, Chile, Iran, Iraq, and countless other countries? Why do they arm the Israelis who use their weapons to bomb children in Gaza? For humanitarian purposes? Or for money, power, and influence? Assad has made it clear that the United States airstrikes are not permitted in Syria. Keep this in mind if you have any interest in preventing World War III. Syria has a mutual defense pact with Iran, and Iran is under the protection of Russia and China. We do not think the world wants to go to war over a manufactured crisis of America's making, but it will, if it is pushed to that point. We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. To the corrupt corporate-paid United States officials, we see you are walking on very thin ice. Let's see how long will the ice holds out. Until then, expect us.
Hey everyone, I just found a video that Anonymous posted to YouTube where they vowed to avenge the attacks on the Charlie Hebdo magazine in Paris, France. Personally, I don't think that it's possible to do what Anonymous promised to do, because they promised that they would find and kill all the terrorists, and I don't think it's possible to just find and kill everyone who wants to commit violence to advance Sharia law. There's just too many people out there. But these guys are taking a bolder stance against these terrorists than even our own government. And everyone else is pretty much just pussyfooting around the issue, afraid to offend anyone. They always have to clarify that these attacks were not perpetrated by people who are really Muslims, blah, blah, blah. But, yeah, they're just pussyfooting around the issue, and I applaud Anonymous for taking a bolder stance. Anyway, here's the video. Bye.
Communiqué de presse d'Anonymous. Dans le cadre de l'attentat du Charlie Hebdo, comme nous vous avions prévenu précédemment, nous comptons faire la lumière sur tous ces événements de plus en hommage à ces innocents tués. Nous Anonymous de toute la planète avons décidé de déclarer la guerre à vous les terroristes. Nous allons vous traquer jusqu'au dernier et vous détruire. Vous vous êtes permis de tuer des innocents. Nous comptons dès lors venger leur mort. Nous allons surveiller toutes vos activités sur le net. Nous fermerons vos comptes sur tous les réseaux sociaux. Vous n'imposerez pas votre charia dans nos démocraties. Nous ne laisserons pas votre connerie tuer notre liberté d'expression. Vous êtes prévenus. Attendez-vous à votre destruction. Nous allons vous traquer en masse partout sur la planète. Vous ne serez à l'abri nulle part. Nous sommes Anonymous. Nous sommes légion. Nous ne pardonnons pas. Nous n'oublions pas. Craignez-nous, État islamique. Al-Qaïda, attendez-vous à notre vengeance.
To the citizens of the world, we are Anonymous. The events currently transpiring in Iraq have made us as a collective re-evaluate our priorities in regards to recent operations. The Iraqi people have gone through almost 2 weeks of sheer terror most of us will never know nor experience. We are held by a code of honor to protect those who are defenseless, both in the cyber world and the real world. Before our inception, the Iraq War was well underway and crimes against humanity were rampant. The United States had no small part in this. When the United States government decided to wage an unnecessary war with the promise of oil and funds to the military-industrial complex, it failed to realize the severity of taking out a leader who controlled a strong internal security force. This led to the power vacuum we witnessed after his capture. Thus, Saddam Hussein was ruthless and violent, but with this war, the United States was guilty of the same crimes. Fast forward to today, and Iraq is descending into chaos yet again thanks to the dastardly ruthless gang aiming to establish an Islamic state combining both Iraq and Syria, thus doing away with the post-World War I borders. They call themselves ISIS. These savages who have no religion or morality are bent on burning everything in their path, killing and pillaging as they go. They must be stopped. Several days ago, their electronic division assumed control of one of our Twitter accounts, claiming it for themselves and releasing several graphic photos of their assault near Baghdad. These tweets have since been deleted. We sincerely apologize to the Twitter followers who had to witness this without warning. This was an unfortunate, unprecedented takeover, and steps have been taken to further secure this account from any future attempted hacks. We would also like to comment on the mainstream media, who are pushing the division of Iraqis even further. The Iraqi public is made up of two Islamic sects, Sunnis and Shias. There are also other groups which include Kurds, Turkmen, Assyrians, Christians and others. The media would want us to believe that ISIS is made up of strictly Sunnis and the Iraqi army is a majority-controlled and operated Shia faction. This is false. The groups that have been listed, including Sunnis, are enlisted in the Iraqi army, and Sunni clerics in Iraq have also called for their followers to join ranks with their Shia brothers to defend their homelands. ISIS is a group made up of the Takfiri sect, which is regarded by many prestigious clerics and organizations including Al-Azhar as un-Islamic. In fact, they have denounced them as Khawarij and declared that they must be exterminated from Islamic lands. This is why we urge the American mainstream media to stop releasing false information and further escalating the violence with their ignorant journalism. In conclusion, we stand by every righteous being when we say that we have also declared complete solidarity against those who affiliate themselves with ISIS and those who control them. Al Jazeera, you have tarnished your reputation by spewing your lies and your treasonous support to ISIS. You will not escape us. To the state of Qatar, Turkey, and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, you will not escape our wrath. Evidence shows your continued support and supply to ISIS. If this does not promptly stop, we will be forced to unleash our entire legion against your pathetic excuse of a cybersecurity. And to the United States, another attempt at fueling your military-industrial complex for the sake of security and democracy will be grounds for our complete assault against your virtual government infrastructure. You have been warned. We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.
Greetings, world. We are anonymous. KKK, it has came to our unfortunate attention that you have been interfering with Anonymous. We are not attacking you because of what you believe in, as we fight for freedom of speech. We are attacking you because of your threats to use lethal attacks against us at the Ferguson protests. Due to your actions, we have started Operation KKK. The aim of our operation is nothing more than cyber warfare. Anything you upload will be taken down. Anything you use to promote the KKK will be shut down. DDoS attacks have already been sent and have infiltrated your servers over the past 2 days. DOX attacks have also been launched on leaders of the KKK. All information retrieved will be given to the public. You messed with our family and now we will mess with yours. Let the cyber war begin. We are a legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Ku Klux Klan, you should have expected.
Greetings, world. We are anonymous. How is it that it seems no one remembers just a few short years ago?
These are the steps that we must take.
There are plenty of steps we can take
right now
to
start getting our economy back on track.
To help create jobs and grow this economy.
If we are going to deal with our dependence on foreign oil,
if we're going to end our dependence on foreign oil,
we'll recruit an army of new teachers.
I want to recruit an army of new teachers.
make college affordable.
Make college more affordable and repair our crumbling roads and bridges. We've got crumbling roads and bridges. Tonight, more Americans are out of work. We still got friends out there and family who are looking for work.
At a time when so many people are struggling to keep up.
A moment when so many people are still struggling.
If you are willing to work with me,
if you're willing to work even harder in this election,
then I promise you,
change will come.
Shall we play a game?
You see something, say something. Report suspicious activity to local authorities.
If you're not breaking the law, if you're not doing anything wrong, then you shouldn't worry what the government is doing.
Terrorism, 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 Al-Qaeda, Mohammed, terrorism, terrorism, war in Iraq, war in Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden.
It's not like my government would ever do it to me, but guess what? You're wrong.
Protest is now illegal in the U.S. Move along, citizen.
America, the greatest losses to our freedom have come not from someone attacking us, but from
no big deal. Get used to it. You know what? We're not going to get used to it.
Police have opened fire on the crowd.
We're all in serious danger.
Millions of dollars spent on new police gear, trucks ready to function as rolling barricades.
What you have here is, this is the wars coming home.
If anybody doesn't believe this government is capable of doing these kinds of things, you're out of your mind.
Go back to bed, America. Your government is in control again.
Well, you know, America's a strange country. All you need to keep them pacified is give them a dozen donuts and a gun. They don't seem to have the capacity, the intellectual capacity, to think of their own self-interest in any other way than the next 5 minutes.
It's time to wake up.
Wake up, America!
Wake up, America.
But I didn't speak up because I was not a writer. Then they came for the students. But I didn't speak up because I was not a student. Then they came for musicians. But I didn't speak up because I was not a musician. And then they came for the Greens, the Muslims, the trade unionists, Christians, and the Jews, the travelers, the homosexuals, the journalists, the artists, the thuggers, the doctors, the philosophers, the economists, the anarchists and the politicians, the nerds, the Europeans, the Americans, the communists, the hackers, illegals, the homeless. And I didn't speak up because I wasn't any of them. Any of them. And then they came for me. And there was no one left to speak up for me.
The proles, if only they could somehow become conscious of their own strength, would have no need to conspire. They needed only to rise up and shake themselves like a horse shaking off flies. If they chose, they could blow the party to pieces tomorrow morning. Surely sooner or later it must occur to them to do it. Until they become conscious, they will never rebel, and until after they have rebelled, they cannot become conscious.
The time is coming when the window for us to restore the control of our government to ourselves will close, and we had damn well better act before then.
You want to know why the American public is fit? They're fit because they're not seeing their Congress do the work that they're sent to do.
We need to demand more of our elected officials.
Damn bills that come out here all the damn time! Come out here in the last second! And I gotta try to figure out how to vote for my people!
Bathed in the excesses of power, they passed a bill that by their own admission, they hadn't read.
This is PR politics.
Unanimous consent that we bring up the bill to extend the tax cut for 160 million Americans. As you walk off the floor, Mr. Speaker, you're walking out.
If you want to stand up on the floor of the Senate and defend the Wall Street banks like Bank of America and the credit card companies, be my guest. I would rather stand with the consumers and retailers who've been taken to the cleaners for years and years.
Why aren't we questioning the underlying premise of the need for a bailout with taxpayers' money? Why aren't we passing new laws that stop the speculation which triggered this? Why aren't we directly helping homeowners with their debt burden? Why aren't we helping American families faced with bankruptcy? Why aren't we reducing debts for Main Street instead of Wall Street? Is this the United States Congress or the board of directors of Goldman Sachs? When I fuck up, who bails me out? No one.
There is no one here to object. This is why the American people have thrown you out of power. You see, you're right. It is within your sole discretion to recognize a member. But you chose to exercise the power of the gavel, Madam Speaker. Therein lies the problem. If he's not here to pull off this political stunt, then we should just proceed and this bill should be withdrawn. It is the right thing to do by the American people to stop these tactics.
Enough!
And make no mistake about it, this is not about national security.
But my point about this is a war without end. I'm afraid of giving up the right to trial by jury and hoping that someday they will declare an end to this war and they'll give back the right to trial by jury.
Mr. Speaker, a nationwide revolt is developing over the body scanners at the airports, and it should.
And we also know there are individuals who are making money off this. They say, trust us. Trust us, the people who brought us Katrina, to be competent in face of a disaster. Trust us, the people who brought us warrantless wiretapping and other excesses eroding our civil liberties. Trust us.
Many of us were told in private conversations that if we voted against this bill on Monday, that the sky would fall, the market would drop 2,000 or 3,000 points the first day, another couple thousand the second day, and a few members were even told that there would be martial law in America if we voted no.
We're not trying to scare kids. This president's foreign policy is what's scaring the kids of this country. Well, it's the same people that told us Saddam Hussein had something to do with 9/11.
Same people that told us Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. Same people that told us we were going to be able to use the oil for reconstruction money. Same people that told us that we'd be greeted as liberators, not occupiers. Same people, same president that told us the Taliban is gone. Same president that told us that Poland is our ally 2 days before they pull out. Same president that tells us Iraq is going just great. Same president that tells us the economy is going just great. Same people that told us the tax cut was going to create millions of jobs. Same people that told us that the Medicare program only cost $400 billion when it really cost $540 billion. So please forgive us for not believing what you're saying. Please forgive the students of this country for not believing what you're saying. Not one thing about this war that has been told to the American people or that has been told to these college students has been true. Not one thing. Bremer says we need more troops. The Pentagon says we need more troops. And this president can't get them from the international community. There's only one option left. Let's be honest with the American people.
Fascism, by definition, is when corporations team up with organized religion and control the government. Do I have to say anything more? Wouldn't you say that we're on the brink if we're not there?
We're witnessing a slow and steady takeover of our true freedoms. And now we see the government taking over banks. We see the government taking over car companies, insurance. We're being told what cars we can drive, how much we can make. And now they want to take control of our health care.
It's one more attempt for them to put everything that we do day and night under the control of the federal government.
Are you willing to sacrifice your freedom for liberty?
Well, I say that they're taking away our free will. The American people are being forced to do something they don't want to do.
But there really is a difference between us, and it's basically this. We don't think the government should be in control of all of this. We want people to be in control. And that, at the end of the day, is the big difference.
What they are trying to do is create an America very unlike the America that has existed for centuries. The thing associated with America, freedom, is precisely what must be destroyed if this is to be turned into a fundamentally different country to suit Obama's vision of the country and of himself.
I think he's going way beyond his constitutional powers assigned to the executive branch, which is, by definition, an imperial precedent.
Once again, total power in one person's hands, not the American way.
He's centralizing power inside the Beltway, taking power and decision-making from families, from individuals, and as a consequence, what he's doing is building an unchecked executive.
Now, I hate to point fingers at anybody, but the President administration probably has a lot to do with that.
But you know who's responsible for it? We are. Personal responsibility.
Where is the outrage to come from? From you.
It turns out you're the knight in shining armor.
First, you got to get mad.
You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. It is time for us to take our country back.
The real problem is that the American people have been too submissive. We have accepted the notion that we should be treated like cattle. Make us safe, make us secure, put us in the barbed wire. It's time for the American people to stand up and shrug off the shackles of our government.
And the way I see it, they're not going to quit doing it until they bring this country to its knees. So I think we should all rise up and we should stop this administration from what they're doing because they're destroying this country.
We the people have got to get control back of our country.
The American people will revolt.
Our government sucks.
So what do you say? Maybe we should all just stop paying our taxes and revolt. Because this is bullshit.
When our forefathers wrote the Constitution with the right to bear arms, it was not about hunting and fishing. The Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, is there so that we, the public, if our government gets out of control, we have the ability to rise up and change it. Now, many people have said to me, well, wait a minute. How could we, the citizens, ever stand up to the U.S. government and their entire military might? Well, wait a minute. I got the answer. We threw everything we had at Vietnam, and they were nothing but a bunch of farmers with a few AK-47s, and they withstood it all. Don't ever allow anyone to tell you that it can't be done. It can be done.
To the government of the United States, those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. It is the constitutional right of the people to reform this government as we see fit. Over the past year, we have shown you what we are capable of. You can continue to resist us, or you can allow us to exercise our rights. We truly hope you choose the latter so that we can peacefully return this country to the principles it was founded upon and restore power to the people. To the citizens of the United States, it is our goal to reform this current government with your help. We do not want anarchy. We do not want chaos. What we want is to restore power to the people. Governments are supposed to derive their powers from the consent of the governed. Over the next few months, we will be releasing a series of videos detailing our reformation plans. IdeaVote will give every American a voice. We ask from you to use your voices. This new world is not one that we wish to shape ourselves. This new world will be that of the people, and the choice is yours to make in what direction we will go.
We are anonymous. We are a legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.
Greetings world. We are anonymous. With the disappearance of those on Malaysian Airlines MH370, billionaire Jacob Rothschild becomes the sole owner of an important semiconductor patent. Coincidence? I think not. The mystery surrounding Malaysian airliner MH370 continues to grow with each passing day, and Mr. Rothschild is smack dab in the middle. Illuminati member Rothschild is believed to have exploited the airliner to gain full patent rights of an incredible KL03 microchip. The US technological company Freescale Semiconductor, who shared its rights with Rothschild, had 20 senior members on board who had just launched a new electronic warfare gadget for military radar systems the day before the plane went missing. The semiconductor company develops microprocessors, sensors, and other technology, including standalone semiconductors, that perform dedicated computing functions. But the questions that arise are, why were there so many Freescale employees traveling together? What were their jobs? Their mission? And did the employees carry valuable cargo? With all the power our elite carry, why couldn't they track down the missing plane? Of the 239 people aboard flight MH370, most of them were engineers working to make the company's chip facilities in Tianjin, China, and Kuala Lumpur more efficient. These were people with a lot of experience and technical background, and they were very important people, Hawes said. It is definitely a loss for the company. Mitch Hawes, Vice President of Global Communications and Investors Relations. According to the Freescale's website, operations for the company began in 1972 and covered an 8-hectare site that tests and manufactures microprocessors, digital signal processors, and integrated radio frequency circuits. Furthermore, it owns Freescale RF, which is involved in making solutions for aerospace and defense, including battlefield communications, avionics, HF radar, band L&S, missile guidance, electronic warfare, and identification IFF. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The Freescale's shareholders include the Carlyle Group, whose past advisors have included ex-US President George Bush Sr. and former British Prime Minister John Major. Some of the company's previous clients include the construction firm owned by the family of Osama bin Laden, the Saudi Bin Laden Group. What makes this claim stand out above all the other theories is the fact that so many highly qualified staff members were on board, and if the airliner crashed into the Indian Ocean, as recently reported, then this would validate the claim all the more. Considering the large passenger jet had flown undetected for 6 hours, the elites had to be involved, because they are the only ones who can accomplish such a task. According to World Truth TV, avoiding radar via cloaking technology has long been one of the objectives of the defense industry, and Freescale has been active developing chips for military radar. On its website, the company says its radio frequency products meet the requirements for applications in avionics, radar, communications, missile guidance, electronic warfare, and identification, friend or foe. The company announced that it was creating a team of specialists dedicated to producing radio frequency power products for the defense industry. They also announced it was releasing 11 of these new gadgets for use in high frequency, VHF, and low band UHF radar and radio communications. The company, Freescale, did not respond to questions from Express Online, including whether any of its missing employees had been working on the defense products. It neither provided any responses to the latest bizarre conspiracy theory being widely published on the comments sections of newspaper websites and other internet forums. Some comments read, "Have you pieced together the puzzle of missing Flight 370 to Beijing, China? If not, here are your missing pieces." 4 days after the Flight MH370 disappearance, semiconductor patent was approved by the US Patent Office. Patent is divided in parts of 20% between 5 starters. One of the owners is the company itself, Freescale Semiconductor, Austin, Texas, USA, and the other 4 Chinese employees of the company, Pidan Wang, Zijin Chen, and Liang Zijing, all the Suzhou City. And they all were passengers of Malaysia Airlines plane that disappeared on March 8th, according to Eternity. It adds, "Here is your motive for the missing Beijing plane." As all 4 Chinese members of the patent were passengers on the missing plane. Patent holders can alter the proceeds legally by passing wealth to their heirs. However, they cannot do so until the patent is approved. So when the plane went missing, the patent had not been approved. Although a Freescale patent exists under number US 8650327, none of the names listed actually appear on the passenger manifest released by the Malaysian authorities. If the patent holder dies, the other owners share equally in dividends from the deceased. If 4 of the 5 patentees die, then the patentee left alive gets 100% of the patent. That remaining patent holder is the company Freescale Semiconductor. Who owns Freescale Semiconductor? The answer is Jacob Rothschild. British billionaire owns the company Blackstone, which in turn owns the company Freescale Semiconductors. Several speculations on the internet now are paying attention to this circumstance. The Rothschilds are a dynasty of financiers and international bankers of German Jewish origin. The family is from the 19th century, one of the most influential families of bankers and financiers of Europe. Is this just another coincidence? I don't think so. Rothschild is hiding evidence to gain the rights to this semiconductor. He wants power, and he wants his money. It may have taken 239 deaths to do it, but to him, that is just part of population control. In the end, he gets his money, his fame, and his power. All while the world remains silent. Or so they thought. Time to expose this fraud for who he really is. We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. To all Rothschild's bloodline. We will be hunting all of you. Expect that.
Greetings, citizens of the world. We are Anonymous. As many Americans' eyes turn to the recent decision by the Ferguson grand jury to not indict Officer Darren Wilson, we feel that it is important to remind you of the many other important cases where rogue police officers have gunned down innocent citizens. We have already launched operations such as Op John Crawford, Op Darian Hunt, Op KKK, and more recently Op Tamir Rice, both Ohio residents who were shot and killed by overzealous, so-called law enforcement who believed that holding BB guns was enough to sentence them to death. These killer cops offered citizens no more than 2 seconds to put down their toy weapons. As many focus on the disproportionate number of African Americans victimized by racist rogue police officers, it is also worth mentioning those of other backgrounds, such as Salt Lake City resident Dylan Taylor, who was shot and killed by police for not responding to orders quickly enough. This was because he had earbud headphones in his ears. Other well-known cases, such as the killing of a homeless man, Kelly Thomas, in 2011, remind us that while certain so-called minority groups might often find themselves disproportionately victimized by racist police officers, this is a broader phenomenon, one that involves the increasing militarization of police departments and the desensitization of officers to the lives and rights of citizens. We are here to tell corrupt and homicidal members of law enforcement that they are no longer safe to commit crimes with impunity. If your own respective departments and federal agencies will not punish you, we will. You will no longer be able to lurk in the shadows. The light of justice will shine upon you and your personal information. You will not be able to live out comfortable, easy lives where you can forget about your crimes. Every day that you walk the streets, you will be recognized, and your whereabouts will be known by anonymous activists and protesters who continue to form alliances with us. Anonymous hackers will join in the massive waves of cyber attacks. In conjunction with allies and anonymous activists who take action on the streets, we will demonstrate outside of your homes and your places of work. Your personal, financial, and other most guarded secrets will be exposed. You will not be allowed to live the comfortable lives you so desire, when there are innocent lives you have taken. We call upon any honest and moral members of local and federal law enforcement to continue to assist us in these efforts. You know, as well as we do, that these rogue officers are a disgrace to your profession. Realize that even in your departments and federal agencies, there are more allies with our operations than you could imagine. Departments and federal agencies that will not punish the guilty and cover up their crimes will become a target as well. Others who join in efforts to defend murder by agents of the state, such as members of the KKK, will continue to be targets, regardless of the recent efforts to backpedal. If you do not wish to become targets, then stand on the side of justice and be on the right side of history. For the purposes of addressing some of the most recent crimes first, we will target officers who have carried out their crimes in 2014. This should not give officers who committed earlier crimes any reason to imagine that they will be spared. We will get to each of you, as this is a part of a long operation which will be carried out in waves. Some of the killer cops who we are putting on notice from the beginning of this operation are as follows. First and foremost, Officer Darren Wilson, we are far from done with you, and the prosecuting attorney Robert P. McCulloch, who went to great lengths to justify your brutality. All who are responsible for the unjust verdict, you're under our radar now, as you are so prominent on our list. Perhaps the least needs to be said about what is coming for you. Realize that you'll never live in peace. We commend the officers within the Ferguson and St. Louis police departments who have been providing us with information. Your allegiance to justice shows us that there are still some good within your ranks who will not go to pressure from a corrupt system. Officer Sean Williams, of the Beaver Creek, Ohio Police Department, you gunned down John Crawford in cold blood. You shot him for holding a toy gun, in a state where holding real guns in Walmart is perfectly legal. You had been advised of this before you pulled the trigger. Now you are on notice from us. The Greene County prosecutor may have chosen not to indict you, but Anonymous has indicted you. We commend Officer Barco, who accompanied you, for not pulling the trigger when John Crawford began running towards him. He saw clearly that at this point, your victim had placed the rifle on the ground. You chose then to shoot him anyway. We have no conflict with you, Officer Barco. We further commend Chief Evers for retiring from the corrupt Beaver Creek Police Department. Officers who leave corrupt departments or stand up to those corrupt officers within them have nothing to fear from us. Officer Braun Cruz, your shooting of Dylan Taylor was ruled justifiable by Salt Lake County District Attorney Singill on Tuesday. But the anonymous verdict is a very different one. You may think that the troubles you have been facing are over, but we assure you that they are just beginning. Rookie Officer Timothy Lohman. Last weekend you shot 12-year-old Timber Rice, without giving him a chance to explain that he only had a BB gun. Officer Garmbach was with you, and because of his experience on the job, he did not pull the trigger. This further highlights your overreaction. The Cleveland Police Department, however, has found themselves a target because instead of acknowledging your crime, they covered it up, lying, saying that Timber pointed the gun at you. You blamed the victim of Officer Lohman's crimes, rather than protecting him. Since you have refused to come to the defense of the innocent, we have taken up his cause. It has come to our attention that the FBI is investigating our response to your corruption. Perhaps those in the FBI who still believe in justice should focus their efforts at investigating your corrupt department. This same department recently took the life of Tanisha Anderson, slamming her on the concrete, instead of bringing the brutal officers to justice. The Cleveland Police Department has been engaged in a cover-up that consistently blames unarmed victims of police brutality for their own deaths. Boone County, Kentucky Deputy Tyler Brockman, your shooting of Samantha Ramsey has put you in our sights. Utah police involved in the cover-up of the shooting death of Darian Hunt, you have not been forgotten. New autopsy results have revealed that you shot his cosplayer, dressed as a samurai in the back. The state has refused to bring you to justice, so Anonymous has decided to hold you accountable. Other police and government agents involved in the killing or cover-up of any innocent, unarmed citizens will be subject to Operation Anon verdict. You will see the results of this operation online and right in front of your houses and places of employment. This is only the beginning. We are Anonymous. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.
And now the plain truth. As you've seen on our show, the government at times tells you lies. The deception is historic and continuous. The government needs to be exposed because it cannot be trusted to expose itself. We live in exciting and fearful times. Most of you today are not afraid of big crime or big business or big labor. Rather, most of us are most afraid of big government.
All right, folks, there is a lot going on right now. Decisions being made that are unprecedented and will have an overreaching impact on what it means to live in the United States of America. But whereas in the past, the time ends. The war is over. The rules go back to normal.
Is this time going to be different? There they examine the erosion of the rule of law and our rights, starting with the Bush administration and continuing on with the Obama administration. It's a detailed account of everything from torture, targeted killing, extraordinary rendition, warrantless wiretaps, an overall massive and unchecked surveillance state, indefinite detention, religious discrimination and profiling, and so on.
You're seeing innocent Americans being wiretapped. You're seeing them put on, these kill lists, and you're seeing people being investigated for doing something as benign as taking pictures of buildings.
Now, the changes include allowing agents to search a group or person proactively without having to make any records of it, allowing them to tail people more than once during a proactive assessment, searching people's trash to find a potential informant, attending up to 5 meetings of a group undercover, eliminating extra supervision of investigations of politicians or journalists if they are witnesses and not suspects, and eliminating any protections for low-profile blogs.
You cannot, under the Patriot Act, even tell a judge under oath in a public courtroom that you received a warrant written by a federal agent.
We are being monitored by what is called FBI's, quote, Nationwide Suspicious Activity Reporting Initiative. Oh boy, how Orwellian does that sound? It apparently contains 161,948,000 suspicious activity files on tens of thousands of Americans, including your employment history, financial documents, phone numbers, pictures, and any other information that the authorities can gather on you. Here comes the twist: on people who have not been charged with any crime. They are just considered suspicious. Not only can the FBI file these reports, but local police can. But not only can local police, your neighbor can turn you in. If your neighbor reports suspicious activity, then it goes in the file. That means they can collect all of your information. They can listen to your phone calls, they can read your emails. Whatever you do that you think is private is not private. The American government is collecting that information without a warrant.
Any cell phone, yours included, can be pinpointed, even if you never make a call.
Consider your cell phone your own personal tracking device, like it or not.
A federal judge has ruled that FBI does not need to get a warrant in order to put a GPS tracking device on your vehicle. All they have to do is think that something you're doing is suspicious enough to put the device on your vehicle, and it's fine.
Researchers reported that iPhones and Droids tracked your every location and then stored that material.
Well, careful what you tweet. An online privacy group suing the Department of Homeland Security over its recently announced plans for a system to monitor blogs, message boards, and social media sites like Twitter, Facebook.
And the idea from the brains over at the DHS headquarters will allow the government to keep data on anybody who uses any sort of news or media outlet to share, report, or stay informed.
About $11.3 million to monitor. Among that was monitoring for news media stories which, quote, reflect adversely on the Department of Homeland Security or U.S. federal government.
Whoa! So
monitoring
it's like
for criticism.
We're going to spend $10 million, $11 million bucks to see if anybody doesn't like us.
Yeah, that's part of the contract.
And make a note of it?
Is to monitor for criticism, to monitor for dissent.
It would allow the U.S. government to blacklist websites and, according to some, break the internet.
It would basically allow any private company or person to shut down almost any website. You wouldn't even get a hearing before they shut down your website.
Whether or not those sites are actually engaged in copyright infringement doesn't apparently need to be proven by a third party or a court. It's strictly up to the entertainment industry. In other words, if they don't like you, you're shut down.
An international agreement that lumps piracy and counterfeiting into one, which has been discussed behind closed doors for nearly 6 years. And it was only when WikiLeaks published a discussion paper in 2008 that it came to be public knowledge. Last year, President Obama signed an executive agreement to get the U.S. on board without asking for congressional approval.
Even though the precise terms of ACTA remain undecided, preliminary documents reveal many troubling aspects about the proposed agreement, such as removing legal safeguards that protect internet service providers from liability for the actions of their subscribers, in effect giving internet service providers no option but to comply with privacy invasions.
Anyone out there who's familiar with the internet service Mega Upload should pay attention, because the feds could very well be watching you. The Protecting Children from Internet Pornographers Act of 2011. Sounds harmless. In fact, it sounds very moral, doesn't it?
What they're doing is collecting all the websites you've been to over the last 18 months so they can use it against you at a later time.
And like, who cares about illegal wiretapping at this point? Like, now the government is pushing to make sure that internet service providers immediately hand over all this information about you, which websites you visited, what your activity is online. You're treated as a criminal and you have to prove yourself innocent.
You know, my personal preference is for the You Are All Criminals Act, which is shorter and I think more to the point because it reverses the usual presumption that we do a search when we think a particular person is guilty. And the assumption behind this bill is we keep everyone's data, we make the company store everyone's information for the government because anyone might be guilty.
And now it looks like domestic drone use is going to come to an airspace near you. So that means that by September 30th, 2015, drones will be flying in the same airspace as airliners, cargo planes, business jets, and private aircraft, as the Associated Press described it.
Local police departments are now using Predator drones in order to basically spy on U.S. citizens.
More and more of our civil liberties being taken away, more and more Big Brother watching over us at all times. One point we wake up and we're the frog and we've boiled. And we go, how the hell did we wind up in this state? In this police state where they watch everything and U.S. citizens are targeted, sometimes without trials. Well, this is how we wound up in it. We told you about it every single day on the Young Turks. It's happening as we speak.
The police state we live in right now is so extreme that when I read the story, it wasn't that surprising to me, right? Do you want to feel comfortable with the fact that the government or local police departments can use a drone to follow you wherever you go, no matter what? It'll hover around your house while you're in there, follow you out of your house, check out where you're going, what are you doing? This police state thing has gotten out of control.
A better eye in the sky, they're calling it the Blue Devil.
And here's what is interesting. With the Blue Devil, what they can do is they've got so many cameras on board, they can actually take a look and know exactly what's going on over 36 square miles. They've got these supercomputers on board that do all the figuring out about, okay, we just heard somebody right over there say this, how do we follow? Yeah, in fact, they're that optimistic, they say it's going to be in the sky on October 14th. In the meantime, they're still sewing up the Kevlar.
Security says people who oppose abortion or worry about the threat of illegal aliens could pose a radical threat to America. They're the ones we need to be watching at Homeland Security. Why are conservative values suddenly being singled out as a terror threat?
People who pay for small purchases in cash, like coffee or gum, apparently that's a big red flag. Big time. But the FBI sees a cash payment as a way for you to cover your tracks, blend in with the normal folk without leaving a trace. Now, one specific area that we've been warned about incessantly over the last few years is the threat of homegrown terrorism. And it's not just a line that was repeated by officials or put into reports. No, we saw the government act on it. We've seen one sting operation after another. The Triangle Center on Terrorism and Homeland Security has just released a report that shows that the feared wave of homegrown terrorism has not materialized. The report's author actually called it a minuscule threat to public safety. This threat has been inflated, but the facts do not back up the claims. And yet, what are the sacrifices that we've all been forced to make in order to be ready to counter it? What are the grave offenses that have been committed against our civil liberties? The power grabs that lawmakers have been able to make while selling us fear of a homegrown threat. That includes Miranda rights being curtailed for domestic terror suspects. We now have an indefinite military detention provision codified into law through the NDAA that was just signed by the president on December 31st of last year. There's a bill that's been pushed by members of Congress to strip Americans of their citizenship if they're accused of being associated with terrorism. So, all that we can get from Panetta's answer here is that the evidence doesn't matter. Due process in a courtroom to prove that evidence doesn't matter. If the government calls you a terrorist, they can kill you, and the rest of us are just supposed to take their word for it. This is part of the problem. The dangers of this overly expansive global war on terror is that anything can now be deemed a battlefield by the administration. You know that NDAA the president signed on December 31st of last year, the one that codified indefinite military detention into law? Well, it's already being applied to legal rationale. But just so you know, it's already being used.
But the thing that makes it critical here is that the U.S. government unilaterally, without any proof, without any due process at all, is actually pointing the finger and saying, you, my friend, are a terrorist. So the question then becomes, if they get to decide, what makes you question whether or not they can't decide that it's you, or it's me, or it's my neighbor, or my father, or my son?
The federal government says it is taking steps to make the internet safer. This week, the Obama administration pressed ahead with plans to create an internet identification system for Americans.
Now you're telling us that the government is going to compile this information
from passports and from state driver's licenses and put it in a national database.
Once you've created a system like that for that purpose, what other purposes might you put it to? Controlling access to health care? Controlling access to housing? How about gun control? Well, you create this system for one purpose, it can be used for just about anything. And you might see kiosks at every government building. It might be that on handheld devices, law enforcement officers would look you up in the National ID database to see if you're entitled to be in the country, or to see if you have tax obligations you haven't paid yet. But if you're in a dispute with the government, if you get crossways with the government, you could be de-identified.
A national biometric ID card is at the center of a new bipartisan immigration plan. Sounds like something out of the future.
Now, the nationalized ID that's being proposed, which includes retinal scans for Americans, fingerprints, vein mapping, and facial mapping, why don't we just brand all the babies at birth?
The government taking a big new step, looking to build a huge database of people's physical characteristics. The FBI is taking on $1 billion project to gather fingerprints, palm patterns, even digital pictures of faces. Eventually, it could expand to include iris patterns, face shape patterns, scars, even information about how you walk and talk.
FAST stands for Future Attribute Screening Technology. Future attributes. Not the attributes you have now, the attributes you're gonna have and will be punished for later.
So this is straight out of Minority Report.
Thank God though, because we didn't have enough of a police state. Best to try to figure out crimes before they happen and punish people for it. And this sounds like something that can't happen, but it can. It's incredibly real.
It will monitor, among other things, body movements, voice pitch changes. It'll also look at eye movements, body heat changes, and breathing patterns. And they're going to use all this information to try to predict whether or not you're going to commit a crime in the future, okay?
So watch out how you move your eyes, and if you're breathing too hard, it might cause you a problem. Do you want somebody with a bomb walking into a football stadium or an airport?
Yeah, that's their reasoning for everything. That's their reasoning for taking all of our civil liberties away. I'm not buying it, okay? They fearmonger, they use fear as a way to sell this bullshit. This is thought police. This is out of 1984. You can't think a certain way, because if you think a certain way, they're going to predict that you might do a crime in the future. It's unbearable. We got to stop this kind of stuff. Since 2001, the federal government has spent $34 billion on militarizing our local police enforcement. Recently, they talked about the school-to-prison pipeline.
I mean, people are getting arrested for leaving class? You're kidding me?
You get arrested for being absent. You get arrested for spraying perfume on yourself. You get arrested for cussing at other students. If you don't get arrested and if you don't get sent to a juvenile detention center, you most certainly get a fine. In 2010, the police gave 300,000 Class C misdemeanors to children as young as 6 in the state of Texas.
They do have police departments inside the schools. Why? Because the 6-year-olds are about to riot? No, because they make money off of it. And one other terrible part of this is that it makes our kids into robots. You know, don't question authority, don't do anything wrong, you do something even slightly out of step with what a teacher wants, that's it. You're committing a misdemeanor, you'll be fined.
Let's say it is a poor family and they do not have the money necessary to pay this fine. What happens is they put the fine on hold until the student is 17 years old. And then when the student is 17, they throw him in jail.
Oh, for Christ's sake, man. Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, right? So, what are we doing, man? We're locking up half the country.
So private prisons, they're like businesses. Of course they want to, make as much money as possible. But think about how that affects you as, as a citizen of the United States, okay? They're looking to put people away for minor offenses, okay, for anything. That's why this war on drugs continues. It's because it's big business for these private jails, for these private prisons. So who knows what's next? Now all of a sudden you videotape a police officer and they're thinking about putting you away in jail.
And this is how we become a police state, where we privatize our prisons and then they buy our politicians and they have the motivation to arrest us all. We are by far and away the country that imprisons the greatest percentage of our population.
It gives the military the power to indefinitely detain American citizens, even those captured here in the United States, suspected, just suspected, not convicted, of some sort of involvement or affiliation with terrorism. So no trial, prison based solely on suspicion, all without a court hearing or a trial.
The government may be preparing for some sort of martial law.
How alien would that be to see troops with rifles and helmets marching in our streets?
New questions tonight about an Army combat brigade being trained to deal with civil disturbances in the United States.
All in the name of the war on terror.
In the past, the wars ended, or the enemy ceased being an enemy. Now we have a different dynamic. Now we have this global war on terror that seems to always be expanding, and we're fighting something like terrorism that you can't necessarily get rid of. You can't eradicate it. So do you think that we're in some kind of danger where we won't be able to end it and go back to where we used to be?
Now, what's really happening here is an attempt to undermine a democracy and replace it with a corporate plutocracy or something that's profoundly anti-democratic. American people are starting to, they're like the canaries in the coal mine on this issue. They're starting to smell the poisonous gas of fascism creeping into our country.
Is this 1984?
This is 100% naked, classical 1984, in-your-face tyranny.
This is straight out of 1984. We're living in a police state. We have the government keeping these heavy files on us when we're completely innocent and doing nothing.
This is just scratching the surface. But it's clear that despite the growing number of people that have come out opposing these bills, the government is going to continue waging its own war without the support of the American people, and even if these bills don't pass. The decisions made by our officials post 9/11 have put a very dark shadow over our actions as a country. But here's where I start to get a little bit frustrated. It's where the mainstream media that's supposed to be the government watchdog once again just starts reporting on these stories as if it's just any old conversation, and they forget about some of the darker practices that are still carried out the rest of the time. The mainstream media should realize, above all, that we have certain laws and standards for a reason in this country. So the politicians don't think that none of us are paying attention when our Constitution and our values are completely trampled on. But they'd like to pretend like it's just a simple tit-for-tat between Obama and the contenders trying to take his seat. He said, she said. Instead of he's wrong, all of you need to step back from the post-9/11 world of fear and paranoia that allows for the laws to be stretched and bent and decimated. And all of you need to come back to reality. This battle is just getting started.
We are no longer that generation that doesn't care. We are no longer that generation that's prepared to sit back and take whatever they give us. We are now the generation at the heart of the fight back. We are now the generation that will stand with everyone who's fighting back. We hope you'll show solidarity with us and send a strong message to this government that they can't throw their cuts at us. We're going to stand up and we're going to fight back.
One day, somebody's going to have to make a stand. One day, somebody's going to have to say enough.
If you don't fight for your rights, they don't exist. Because power always wants to take them away. But our Constitution doesn't mean a damn thing if we, the people, don't stand up for it.
Yellow ribbons and lapel pins will not save this country. Be it with your lives, labor, or tax dollars, stop investing in your own oppression. Guard your communities from the police state. Don't waste a single vote or a single dollar on the two-party system. Do not be content merely to grumble and to march while they are using fear, force, and violence as weapons of oppression. We must embrace the opportunity to resist civilly while we still can. American values have been nearly vanquished by consumerism, militarism, and authoritarianism.
A loose collective born on the internet, Anonymous has no official members and no hierarchy. You know, law enforcement is intimidated by Anonymous.
We have no threats, but behold the power of the quill and ink.
We must, as a nation, once again, embrace defiance, rebellion, and resistance.
We are Anonymous. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget.
Do not fuck with us.
The computer hacker group Anonymous is claiming tonight that it took down the website of the Federal Appeals Court in San Francisco this afternoon.
They took down Senate.gov servers. They've taken down HB Gary. Sony's claiming they did $150 million worth of damage.
So many confidential files that tonight, because of these hackers, can be in the hands of anyone.
Visa, MasterCard, the PayPal situation.
The criminals who hacked into Sarah Palin's private email.
The
Church of Scientology says Anonymous is a cyber terrorist group of religious bigots.
Anonymous and this other group called Lulz Sec. They seem to be wanting to prove a point.
Anonymous kind of was like the big, strong, buff kid who had low self-esteem, and then all of a sudden punched somebody in the face and was like, holy shit, I'm really strong. And Anonymous calls itself the final boss of the internet, and sometimes it proves to be really fucking true. You are going to violate the freedoms of the internet, you certainly better watch the fuck out.
They are kind of the rude boys of activism. There's a real rough edge to them, which I think also is one reason why they garner so much love and hate from people too. They represent a certain sort of chaotic freedom.
Individual, young, nameless, faceless folks are having geopolitical impact. I mean, it's both exhilarating to realize that and terrifying to realize that. It kind of depends on how that power is wielded.
We are Legion. We do not forget. Expect us.
We stand for freedom. We stand for freedom of speech, the power of the people, the ability for them to protest against the government, to right wrongs. No censorship, especially online, but also in real life.
We have members throughout society and all stratas of it worldwide. Yet we have no leadership.
It's one voice. It's not individual voices. That's why we don't show our faces. That's why we don't give our names. We're speaking as one, and it's a collective. Good timing.
I would love to live in a country where the government fears its citizens and not the other way around. But right now, plenty of anonymous actors are in hiding because of fear of reprisals by the government. I've been called many things. There's unpatriotic.
That we're just a bunch of children sitting in our parents' basement.
I got called a terrorist sympathizer. We've been called kids, we've been called cyberbullies, we've been called hooligans, and you know, sometimes those words aren't entirely unfair, but this is a serious political movement.
No one, in the general public really seems to get it. What they don't seem to get is that the ability for Anonymous to be everything and anything is its power.
Anonymous is a series of relationships, hundreds and hundreds of people who are very active in it and who have varying skill sets and who have varying issues they want to advance and who are collaborating in different ways each day.
They're a little bit like a prism or kaleidoscope. They've got many different facets and many different sides. Of course, when you spend enough time with them, you start to get a sort of feel or texture that's not just random, right? Yet it's very multifaceted, very rich, which does span from the quite lighthearted to the very, very serious.
Bob Dylan had a line in a song just saying, to live outside the law, you must be honest. They might do something which isn't technically correct, maybe it's not legally correct, but they're doing it for purposes that in their minds at least are ethical.
People who know what they're doing, who share an ethos, who have a commitment to exposing and humiliating the man, who have a very low tolerance of lies and what they perceive as evil on the part of overweening power structures. They share information, they share tools and techniques, and they are currently having a very good time.
The hacker culture, as we know it, really sprang from one place. It was MIT, and it was specifically the people in the Model Railroad Club, the Tech Model Railroad Club.
Hacking originated as humorous pranks. When the guys at MIT put a Volkswagen up on top of the dome of the building, and people woke up and saw the car up there in the morning, or they measured a bridge by the body lengths of somebody. I would say his name was Brian, and discovered the bridge over the Charles River was, 822 Brians. These are funny things. That's where hacking originated, and it migrated into engineering and computer communities. It's witty, it's pranks.
I'm Chris Weisopel, former member of The Loft.
We don't necessarily say hacking group because it makes it sound like we're hacking, so we used to call it a hackers think tank. Hacktivism was a term coined by a group called Cult of the Dead Cow. The Cult of the Dead Cow was really kind of sort of like a propaganda type of organization. They had a guy who's the minister of propaganda. They're kind of merry pranksters. Like everything they did was completely over the top. One of the guys there coined the term hacktivism because he saw one of the things his group was doing, which he called hacktivism, was writing software that people in other countries could use to communicate securely, even if their government was spying on them. So the principle was really, it was freedom of expression. It was everyone should have access to the internet. Everyone should be able to communicate and get their message out on the internet. Even more important in countries where there was repressive regimes, that if you said something against the regime, they would come and take you away and you weren't saying it anymore. Just like in traditional activism, it spans the full gamut from sit-ins or pickets to actually spiking trees and pouring sand in the engines of construction vehicles. I mean, there's real sabotage. The same thing does all fall under the hacktivism label. There is a spectrum.
There's sometimes a strong anarchist flavor to it as well. It's resistance to authority and those who would impose groupthink and group behavior on people, which was rightly perceived to be a consequence of the digital revolution as it was used by people in power to do hacking on behalf of righteousness and to redress the grievances of the world. Lance lowered Don Quixote on his horse, nag though she was, flying at the windmills of modern life.
Anonymous grew out of what's known as 4chan. And essentially, this is just a website where people can upload images and you don't actually give your name. It's just sort of anonymous.
When you look at 4chan, you're often surprised because it looks like a site from like 1995 or something. The idea is very simple. You post a comment and you post a picture. And you can post under your name or anonymously. And it's separated into boards about particular topics. So there's a topic on anime, there's a topic on weaponry.
There's like a 4chan board for origami, and you just upload interesting pictures of origami. And then there was a group called the B board, which essentially was for like anything goes.
The first time anybody goes on B, it's kind of an instant revulsion. Because there's never a time that you go on there where you don't see something horrible. That instantly puts off a lot of people.
The idea is post something that can never be unseen. Half of the posts on B are there specifically to make people not want to come back to B.
It's what you get when people are allowed to express themselves with absolutely no restrictions whatsoever. It's the kind of sum of human imagination when people can get together and think together without any limits or parameters.
It's the most vile, disgusting, and funny thing on the internet.
One of the important things about 4chan is to have a thread that really explodes and lasts for a long time. If it doesn't, then it disappears. It's a site that's not archived. So it creates conditions for anything that grabs attention at some level. And so humor and grotesqueness as a result are quite good for that.
I'd rather just be referred to as anonymous, I guess, in the interviews, because I have some docs out on me. 4chan's just where I went to. I grew up on it and I lived there. That's just what I did for fun. It takes a thick skin to enjoy it. But, as long as you're not offended, you'll occasionally come into something really cool or really creative on 4chan. I think the most interesting thing about it is how you can watch memes evolve. You'll see something posted one day, and then a week later it's got 50,000 derivatives of it. A meme is basically just an idea. It's kind of like a gene, but in the realm of the idea.
A lot of the great internet memes that we all know and love, lolcats, right? Little cats doing funny things, and then they have, Icon has cheeseburger, right? All that stuff seems to start in this like petri dish that is 4chan B-board.
Say it
insane chocolate rain.
Name any meme from the last about 6 years, and I'll bet you either in its first posting ever was on 4chan, or at least one of its earliest revisions that became what it was on 4chan.
I can see the food situation is so we'll be on our way.
It's basically the best breeding ground for internet culture, as far as I'm concerned.
With your neighborhood insurance rates, chocolate rain.
4chan is also very known for acts of trolling.
Trolling is a fucking art. Trolling is getting the person you're talking to get as pissed off as they possibly can, and for no reason except for your own enjoyment. Maybe you're trying to illustrate a point, but it's mostly for your own enjoyment.
For them, it's funny that like people think the internet is serious business. And if people think the internet is serious business, it's a troll's job to make their life terrible.
The idea of anonymous came initially as a joke. I mean, somebody suggested that what if the whole site, what if 4chan, what if B was just one person? And what if that's just one guy called Anonymous sitting somewhere and you're just reading all these posts by one guy? And it kind of looks like that from the outsider's perspective. I mean, there's no way to tell the difference. It might as well be one guy.
Fox News did a very famous segment about it.
They call themselves Anonymous. They are hackers on steroids, treating the web like a real-life video game, sacking websites, invading MySpace accounts, disrupting innocent people's lives. And if you fight back, watch out. Destroy. Die. Attack. Threats from a gang of computer hackers calling themselves Anonymous.
I've had 7 different passwords and they've got them all so far.
Anonymous hacked his site and plastered it with gay sex pictures. His girlfriend left him.
She thought that I was cheating on her with guys.
As long as I can think back, Anonymous have done some pretty off-color things in the name of getting cheap laughs, you know. But, I mean, that's part of the culture.
They get what they call lulz.
Lulz is a corruption of LOL, which stands for laugh out loud. Anonymous gets big lulz from pulling random pranks. For example, messing with online children's games like Habbo Hotel.
Habbo Hotel was this online community where you had an avatar and you walked around and talked to other people. It was kind of like an early version of, you know, World of Warcraft or Second Life or any of those virtual worlds. What the people on B did was invade Habbo Hotel, created, you know, thousands of avatars. They all had this one uniform of a black guy with a big afro wearing a black suit. And so there would be thousands of these people, black guys, black suit, you know, huge afro, walking around this world, and they would do things like form a swastika out of themselves. And I think that was a real landmark because it was when they were able to see that, you know, they can use their numbers to do something really interesting and really disruptive.
So we blocked the entrance to their pool, and that just pissed them off so fucking much. It was fucking beautiful. That was fucking just wonderful. Wonderful times. Those kids love that pool. They love the shit out of their pool.
The goal was actually to offend everyone, simply because the idea that we could offend you by drawing a little shape on the screen was stupid to the people involved in it. They were like, really? You're going to get that mad over us just drawing this on the screen? Wow, well, you need to refocus a little on life because this should not be upsetting you that much.
All these different organizations online, whether it's 4chan or just any website, there's typically a community aspect to it. This is where people have their social relationships. This is where their friends are. This is where they have a creative outlet. And so all those aspects are going into groups like Anonymous, where people feel like they're part of a bigger thing and they're able to express themselves within that group.
There were certain words, certain phrases, certain ways people respond to things, certain images that were posted that created a pattern, and that pattern was, I guess, the origin of what is now Anonymous.
It's like Freemasons with a sense of humor, and so much as they have this common symbology, and one of their chief joys, which is kind of wrapped up in power and secrecy, was the fact that they could recognize each other by referencing these symbols, referencing these phrases. Over 9,000.
It's over 9,000!
I lost my iPod. Mudkips, anything involving Mudkips. So you have this weird sort of international culture developing with people, across the world, wherever they may be.
In late 06 and, into early 07, there's a bit of a sea change where instead of just posting a bunch of content or randomly saying we're going to go over to some website and post a bunch of dirty comments against someone, it becomes a little more organized.
Welcome to the Hal Turner Show.
They went after a guy named Hal Turner.
I am being discriminated against because I'm white.
Hal Turner was a neo-Nazi who was, big online and had a podcast.
I think that the 14th Amendment was not ratified properly, and I think, therefore, it is still okay to have Negroes as slaves in America.
The first time I heard about Hal Turner is he was knocking somebody on 4chan. There's a million neo-Nazis out there. But he started picking on our dude, so we had to go to our dude's fucking defense, and it just so happened that he was a neo-Nazi, so that's a bigger reason that he's a fucking dickface.
Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hola, this is Pedro.
Spick, don't call.
Diego.
He was just a horribly racist radio personality who seemed to handle it well when you called in. Like, he could handle being berated by Anonymous. And that made it very interesting. It made it a bit of a challenge. It wasn't some guy who just either crumbled or stopped answering the phone. It was a guy who would yell back.
Hal Turner wasn't the first, actual person that, Anonymous had caused trouble for, but the circumstances ended up being significant. They DDoS'd his website, stuff like that, costing him thousands of dollars, bandwidth fees.
Denial of service has been around for a long, long time. The equivalent of if you, for some reason wanted to disrupt a bus service, right? You can hire 1,000 extras to all go and line up at the bus station, right, and get on the bus. And so that anyone who was really trying to get on the bus couldn't do it, right? It's as simple as that. When you stop trying to visit, website goes back up, no permanent damage.
We DDoSed him, and then we kind of trolled him in real life. We sent countless pizzas to his house. We signed him up for escorts on Craigslist. We sent a bunch of pallets of industrial materials to his house, which he ultimately had to foot the bill for. And basically, we destroyed his ability to pay for his radio show, and that took him off the internet.
And then they ended up getting some real hackers to help them out. This wasn't sort of pranks. They actually were able to get into Hal Turner's private servers and his mail servers and find some interesting emails that he was serving as an FBI informant, which, if you're a right-wing neo-Nazi, is not a good thing to be.
And obviously him being an FBI informant and also his reaction, his sort of douchebaggy reaction to the raids, damaged his credibility within the white nationalist scene, which is a shame.
Hal Turner's gone. He's been prosecuted by the feds for threatening judges.
What follows is a period of confusion and anger in which, the original Anonymous people, the sort who want to keep Anonymous as this nihilist little, ridiculous group, are upset that now, that the most terrible thing on the internet is now becoming a force for good all of a sudden.
I'm Mike Vitale, and my handle is Seth Dude. Now, this is January 2008. Anonymous is strong now. We're not a little dinky fucking group anymore. This is millions of people worldwide, and we're watching. And then Scientology stepped in with a big target on its chest.
A video came out of Tom Cruise. It was supposed to be an internal Scientology video, talking about secrets of Scientology.
Being a Scientologist, when you drive past an accident, it's not like anyone else. As you drive past, you know you have to do something about it because you know you're the only one that can really help.
It talks about you're the only one who can stop, bad things from happening. And so this is kind of widely mocked online.
It circulated like wildfire.
Instantly, the Scientologists post a DMCA, Digital Millennium Copyright Act. And this is a way that if you own content, you can go to video sites, upload sites, and have your content pulled when someone uploads it illegally.
So Scientology's always at odds with the internet, always trying to legally bully people out of fucking them over on the internet. They always did that. And then here they are trying it again, but you know what? Anonymous saw that, and they said, oh, you guys just fucked around badly. You're trying to censor our internet. Are you trying to take a joke away from Anonymous? You don't do that.
A few Anons, a few people on 4chan posted, hey, we should grab that video and post it on a few other sites.
What followed was It's this term called the Barbra Streisand effect. And this video, as they're attempting to suppress it, went everywhere. Like, everywhere you look on the internet, you were gonna stumble upon this video.
Actually, Gawker, the site that I worked for, was, I think, the first one to put it on the website, and we got in a huge legal battle with Scientology, who wanted us to take it down.
Scientology is an interesting target because in some ways it's the perfect inversion of what geeks and hackers value. At so many different levels: science fiction, intellectual property, discourses of freedom, science and technology. It's very proprietary, it's closed. And so in some ways, if you had something like a cultural inversion machine and you stuck geeks and hackers in there, you'd get something that looks a lot like Scientology. So it's quite offensive, and there's a real pleasure in attacking your perfect nemesis.
And people who knew what Anonymous was to begin with were like, oh my God, Anonymous is going to go to war with Scientology. This should be really interesting. Especially because it's two weird-ass groups. I mean, I've been an Anon for a long fucking time. I know Anonymous is really strange. They're weird, and the stuff we like is weird, and it's really not mainstream at all. Now you have Scientology. Also really weird. A lot of crazy shit goes down. Anybody on the outside who's seeing this is going, let's watch these two retards fight. Like, both their pants are going to fall down, they're going to triple, and it's going to hurt everybody, and it's going to be hysterical.
And then that's when 4chan kind of reared into action, really reared into action. And they started to troll the Church of Scientology. And this took the form of pranking the Dianetics hotline, ordering pizzas.
I go to call them on the phone, and it's busy, busy, busy. And that's their main fucking Dianetics hotline. Their Dianetics 800 number, you can't get through because Anons have completely fucking clogged it. And just probably saying stupid shit. The whole idea was just you call them just to keep them on the phone. What's an Elron? How do I Dianetics my face? They were not expecting that, and they couldn't handle it.
I'm Brian Mettenbrink. I had just gone to 4chan just on pure happenstance, and I saw a post about the Scientology thing, and I started looking up stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is actually for a decent cause. I think I'll, do this.
Anonymous members have developed a distributed denial of service attack tool called Low Orbit Ion Cannon, which is a name taken from a computer game.
Low Orbit Ion Cannon is what's called an endgame weapon in Red Alert. All you had to do was literally follow instructions, step by step.
You do it, you put in the site, you see that the IP is correct, you make sure that all these settings are good, and you hit the button, and off it goes.
And what it does is it tells Scientology.org, in this case, it tells them to send their website to my computer about, I think, it was 800,000 times in a weekend, and I'm pretty sure I probably took it down myself a couple of times. It felt like you were making a difference, just you yourself, and you didn't even have to leave your home,
And one of the guys said, we need to make a video. We have to make a video.
Hello, leaders of Scientology. We are Anonymous.
When the video came out on January 21st, that was one of the first times that Anonymous, as a culture, started referring to itself as Anonymous as a movement. That video probably changed everything.
We are Anonymous. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.
It basically looked like if a computer was going to tell you that he was going to beat the shit out of you, this is what it would look like.
That one video really galvanized that moment of innovation. That's exactly like with that video, internet activism, as it's known today, was born.
And you just see this consensus forming that it's going to happen. So we made the code of conduct. Don't bring weapons. Dress accordingly. Cover your faces, because they will try and find out who you are and screw with your life.
Rule number 17. Cover your face. This will prevent your identification from videos taken by hostiles.
Scientology has a history of harassing, stalking, and just generally doing horrible things to its critics. So people needed a way to hide their identities. A lot of people had very legitimate fears. They don't want to be followed home. They don't want to be stalked. They don't want to put their families and themselves in danger.
Everyone was going, well, we're going to wear a mask. What's the only fucking mask that we all already know or have a joke about? And it's the Guy Fawkes mask. You see the movie V for Vendetta, the ending scene where everyone's wearing the Guy Fawkes mask. That is very reminiscent of what Anonymous thinks Anonymous is. We wanted to represent anonymity in some way when it moved into real life. I think that the Guy Fawkes mask was one of the most natural things to happen. It is the idea that none of us are as cruel as all of us. You have this massive crowd of people who are anonymous that is going to fight against a bigger thing and win.
Even after watching the video, it's like, yeah, this is great, but who's actually gonna do it? Who's gonna step up? Are people actually gonna get out of their house? And I guess we were really affected by the stereotype of that whole community, there being internet nerds, that too afraid to leave their mom's basements.
No one thought that they were gonna come out.
This is me on the way there. I haven't slept. I'm very fucking tired.
And I remember going to the park that day, and it's really fucking early in the morning, which I thought was a bad idea. And I'm smoking a cigarette, and I'm looking around like, where the fuck is everybody? There's nobody here.
So here I am, sitting in Bryant Park, waiting for the other announcers to show up.
I remember thinking like, oh fuck, like, am I gonna be the only one in the park? Am I gonna walk to Scientology with fucking 6 or 7 people? Which totally defeats the entire purpose of this, because now they could single me out, you know? Then I get up and I start walking around, and I see there's a lot of green balloons over there for some reason. On the other side of the park, there was like fucking 200 people. There was Guy Fawkes masks everywhere, and I'm like, holy shit, this is huge.
There's a fucking lot of us. That's pretty good. I had no idea how many Anons there were until we started moving.
And it just fucking got bigger. I remember walking through Times Square, and everybody in Times Square was an Anon. Like, and you know, this is like a fucking 1,000 person per like fucking minute foot traffic area. And everywhere I'm looking, I'm seeing fucking Anon symbols. It was fucking wild. It was really wild.
This is our fucking raid.
Hell yeah! So we start getting numbers in. And Sydney. We're thinking that it's going to be 50 people. And before 10 a.m., before even time, there's already 50 people there. And there's still streams of people walking down the streets. A couple hours into it, you know, because I didn't go to bed until 1 in the morning, you know, you're looking at Sydney as, wow, there's 250 people in Sydney. The cops are estimating higher than that for their reports. What just happened? Adelaide, Perth, and Melbourne happened. And, you know, over 200 at each of them. We nearly broke 1,000 leaving Australia. Now, the next protest was Tel Aviv, which had actually gotten its first Scientology building right before this. There were Palestinians and Israelis at this protest, both holding their flags. And at one point, they actually switched flags and held up each other's flags and whatnot. It was awesome to see. I call our guy in London, Britanon, and I say, hey, what's going on there? And he's like, did you just get out of bed? I said, yeah, I haven't even turned on the computer. I just figured I'd call you. And he said, we've got 600 people, and the cops are really, really mad at me.
All the major cities were having hundreds of people come out. It was massive. Clearwater had like 300 people. I don't think anyone beat out LA. I think LA had over 1,000 people.
We are Legion! We are Legion!
The thing that happened was something completely different, and hundreds of people from every city just swarmed the streets. It was kind of overwhelming, a little even scary, but scary in a good way.
Soon, you know, we're at around the 10,000 mark, you know, and we were joking the whole time, over 9,000, you know, one of those memes. It was too surreal. It was not believable.
You go by what name?
We are Anonymous.
It was very empowering, especially after people saw the thousands of people showing up. This was it. We owned the world at that point.
We all met each other. The idea of an Anon is you're fucking alone until you get to 4chan, you know, and then these people all think like you, you know, and all of a sudden you're not alone. You are with fucking 500 others, you know, they all know the same jokes as you. They all clearly have similar interests as you. Here's your culture. You meet your own people finally.
It's perhaps a little surprising. It's not just preteens or teenagers. There's a far more even mix of males and females than you would imagine otherwise.
And you know, there were a lot of you know, these so-called, you know, guys who weren't socially good. They were very awkward. They still lived at home at 23, half of them virgins. And I'll tell you, the amount of those people who got laid from these protests happening is in the thousands that would not have for years probably.
That's why those protests were so important. It was a chance to finally meet other people that were previously anonymous and unknown, and hence it was the moment of the end of their anonymity.
Scientology, they kind of fought back, so to speak. They posted stuff online.
While claiming they are peaceful, in less than 3 weeks, anonymous members made or encouraged 8,139 harassing or threatening phone calls, 3.6 million malicious emails, 141 million hits against church websites, 10 acts of vandalism, 22 bomb threats, and 8 death threats against members and officials of the Church of Scientology.
They wanted to find me. They did. They hired PIs.
They started taking pictures of us, threatening to sue us.
I did the whole low orbit ion cannon stuff, and then I pretty much just went about my life after that for, I think it's 6 months, and then the FBI showed up here at my parents' house.
2 men got out of the car and took
Flashed
their jackets off and laid their guns on the front seat and came up to ask us if Brian was home and explained that they were the FBI and they were looking for Brian, and I've never been so scared.
I did the second most damage is what Scientology said. I sent the second most out of everybody. So I got the maximum for my category, which was 1 year in prison and 1 year supervised release. I think, you know, the way I feel is for what I did was one of the most, like, lopsided punishments I've ever, like, read about or heard of. Yeah, I think it's ridiculous, especially the year supervised release where I can't touch a computer for a year. I'm not sure what that's supposed to solve except make my life difficult. So that computer behind me back there, I could go back to prison if I went over and touched it.
I'm very proud of what he did. He stood up for what he believed in.
I never would even dream of hurting anybody, you know. It's just not me.
Prior to Anonymous, critics of the church still had to be very, very careful because of the aggressive lawsuits that were launched against academics, journalists, and other critics. I would say that era is over. And Anonymous, more than any other sort of intervention, is probably responsible for that change.
There's actually caused a decent rift in Anonymous.
There was one big group, significant group of people who would say, this Chanology stuff, it's cancer, it's awful, it's bad, it's just bringing attention to us that we don't want.
One Anon said it well once, there is no leader, their ops have momentary leaders, de facto leaders.
Almost through meritocracy, there's more respected or more persistent participants. Some people participate in a single operation and are never heard from again. It might even be a housewife who just, you know, agrees with that political statement or that protest.
I like to describe this with the picture of a bird swarm. Everybody's flying very, very quiet. Suddenly one bird flies into the other direction and the mass fly into the same direction following that person. It's totally okay to say, I'm sorry, I don't take part. When Chanology was running full force, it was like a kid stretching for the first time and actually seeing the real power.
If you had asked me all throughout 2008 and most of 2009 Is the politics of Anonymous always going to be sutured and hinged to the Church of Scientology? I would have said yes. And it became unsutured, unhinged, when a different political wing was born in 2010.
It is our task to find secret abusive plans and expose them where they can be opposed before they are implemented.
The interesting thing about someone like Assange is that he actually also sprang from, a hacker culture. It's a mentality of spreading information.
Julian was Mendax. He was the greatest hacker that ever walked the face of the earth when I was a kid. I mean, they rumored he could move satellites around in space by hacking into NASA. Maybe it never happened, but it was a myth that kept young kids like me wanting to plug a computer into a modem and see if I can move some satellites around.
WikiLeaks is an instantiation of the hacker ethos. Truth wants to be free, and we want to liberate it.
WikiLeaks released a huge trove of diplomatic cables. There was a lot of controversy from every quarter of society.
The WikiLeaks website released nearly 400,000 secret U.S. files on the Iraq War late today. It was the largest leak of classified U.S. files in history.
There was one particular moment that really sparked the fire, and this was when PayPal, MasterCard, and Amazon pulled services for WikiLeaks.
So all of a sudden, there's no way to actually process donations to WikiLeaks. And then people went and found neo-Nazi groups. Visa and MasterCard were perfectly fine with you being able to PayPal being able to make donations to them. But WikiLeaks, no.
I think WikiLeaks is doing a good thing. It's just a total hypocrisy. They got their little fucking banking mafia to fuck, WikiLeaks over.
People were incredibly angry. There was a real sense of rage.
Anonymous DOSed PayPal. They were pissed.
The numbers of participants were massive. And they managed over the course of a couple of days to disable the websites of MasterCard and PayPal.
It was beautiful. Because what you had is people finally stood up for something.
My name's Pete Fine. You can call me an internaut or a hacktivist. Telecomics is an ad hoc cluster of volunteer net activists who have spent much of the last year trying to keep the internet running in the Middle East. In kind of the lead up to the Egyptian revolution, we would tweet on people's behalf. We would get people from Egypt who were unable to access Twitter on their own on our IRC network, and we would take reports from them and tweet them out using our account to kind of help them get the word out about what they were experiencing.
Some of this shit is personal. And one of the things about the movement as a whole, when Egypt rolled around, is that Egypt broke us emotionally. Watching in real time with live feeds that we helped set up, Egyptians get massacred with machine guns. It was different, and I have never in cyber activism wept before. It's never bothered me like that. It's never been able to touch me the way Egypt touched me.
And then January 27th, January 28th rolls around, and the Egyptian government starts shutting down the internet. I mean, just for the whole country. The whole country. There's this fantastic traffic graph that you can see the traffic coming out of Egypt, and it looks like, like this, and it goes like that. Just totally stops. And we were just shocked. We were just like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck? To think that a country would completely cut itself off as much as it was able to from the outside world was pretty unthinkable. We know bad things go on in the dark places.
That's the kind of thing that could start riots. I think when Mubarak did what he did, I think it really upset people here as well as in the Middle East.
I put myself in their place, and I found myself in a desert of nothingness because he just wiped out everything that my world incorporated. That just showed me and everybody else that the same thing can happen at any time, at anywhere, in any government.
Anonymous and the people on the internet stood up and said, go fuck yourself. You want to shut down their internet? Fine. The people on the internet will show them how to turn it back on.
A lot of my friends helped with encryption, helped people on the ground in those countries validate SSL keys and certificates, and really showed them how to subvert their government and become free.
And then Telecomics started to tweet connections to the internet, dial-up connections.
In Egypt, the care package we put together included some kind of our comms information, the ham radio and dial-up modem details. In total, we helped coordinate and run about 500 dial-up modem lines. We also Googled up treatments for tear gas and other kind of basic medical treatment and found folks who could translate that into Arabic. Sort of put this together in a nice one-page PDF and fax, and off it goes.
President Hosni Mubarak has decided to step down from the office of President of the Republic.
When Mubarak left, it was a hell yeah moment. People can rise up, people can make a change. And I think for a lot of people in America, it was the first time they had seen people rise up and take down their government and say, we're sick of this shit. We're sick of the oppression. We're sick of living as slaves to your power.
We had Egyptians come thank us as we're doing this stuff, and I said to them, like, look, you guys just get our back if stuff goes down here. It's a revolution that was facilitated by the internet, by Facebook, and by Twitter. Not caused by it. I mean, 50 years of dictatorship has caused the Arab Spring. But the internet has certainly been helping.
Although it was awesome and it was one part we were fighting for me it was quite clear that it's not the end of the story. That it's not suddenly changing into rainbows and nine cats or whatever, but that we now have to watch even more.
Suddenly on February 5th, Financial Times article comes out that we all see. It's quoting this guy named Aaron Barr, who's the CEO of HP Gary Federal, which is an intelligence contractor. And Aaron Barr is telling his Financial Times journalist, Joseph Min, that he's been secretly monitoring the AnonOps server where all this is going on, and has done so for several weeks, and using his own custom brand of information operations techniques, has managed to identify the alleged leadership of Anonymous, including 25, quote, lieutenants, unquote, some sort.
We have to see this document. Everyone wants to know. We don't need to destroy him. We don't need to destroy his company. So they get it. It was unbelievably easy to get into that network.
Now, to put that in hacker terms, Anonymous is a hornet's nest. And Barr said, I'm going to stick my penis in that thing.
The HB Gary hack brought about 70,000 emails.
Probably the most important ones had to do with a proposal that HB Gary had already formulated. It was packaged up as a nice PowerPoint presentation, kind of act as privatized agent provocateurs, where they were going to discredit WikiLeaks.
HB Gary was proposing submitting fake documents to WikiLeaks, and then when discovered as fake, the error could be called out and it would discredit WikiLeaks.
Right. So, so there's a lot of like specifics I can't talk about. So let me try to answer that though in a general sense. Well, first of all, it's probably no surprise to anybody. I'm not a big fan of WikiLeaks. I think that the broad purpose of trying to get as much information, proprietary or classified information for the government, expose that, is an extremely destructive and dangerous purpose.
The proposals involve conducting information war on WikiLeaks and its supporters, creating dissension within WikiLeaks, DDoS attacks.
You also wanted to launch cyber attacks on WikiLeaks infrastructure to get information on document submitters.
Well, one thing I guess I want to make sure is clear is, you know, none of those activities had actually occurred. You know, in business, you know, when you start proposing or thinking about an idea, there's a brainstorming phase. And somebody says, well, what if, what could we do? What's theoretically possible?
Well, still, this was an idea. This was proposed. This was something that you thought about.
Right.
They also wanted to go on a campaign kind of targeting Glenn Greenwald, who's a reporter for Salon, who's an outspoken kind of critic of the government and supporter of WikiLeaks.
It seems like you're trying to attack a journalist here.
Yeah, and I don't want to talk too much more about Glenn Greenwald, but other than, what I previously said is, there was never an intent to attack journalists, not on my part. Nor I guess I should say I should generalize that and to say that I would never just outwardly attack a journalist, other than if I felt that there was a journalist in my mind that was acting unethically. That's a fair game for having a public discussion about.
They were walking a very fine ethical line at points, and in many cases, the mass opinion is, no, they stepped well past it.
I will not support broad theft of information released to the public, because that's nothing but destructive. If somebody has information that's been stolen from them, and whether or not WikiLeaks encouraged the theft of that, or whether or not it was just put in their lap, still they're threatening to release the information that is the private property of another organization. So your choices are to just allow that to happen or to try to stop it. How offensive is too offensive? We've certainly seen a lot of strategy coming out of governments across the world now saying, publicly admitting that they need to develop better offensive strategies in cybersecurity, because defense as a whole, it isn't enough. It never is enough.
In the court of public opinion, that took H.B. Gary quickly from being a perceived victim to being a perceived villain themselves. It was becoming harder and harder to distinguish the good guys from the bad guys.
And then, kind of seemingly out of the blue, there was something by the name Lulzsec that sailed into the seas.
Lulzsec, it's sort of a group, mostly from Anonymous, who, large part of the same people who hacked H.B. Gary. And they decided to form this little group and just carry on operations sort of outside the purview of Anonymous for a while.
They hacked whatever they wanted, they released whatever they wanted. It's almost like they had no rules. They just said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to stir up the cart. We're going to make some trouble. We're going to make some waves. And they did.
The majority of time, the majority of Anons are not doing anything particularly illegal. When they are, a huge number of them try to do that in a very specific political context. For those people, what Lulzsec was doing, they were funny, but they were attacking random targets. They were breaking the quasi-rules by attacking media.
PBS's Frontline runs a documentary mainly focused on Bradley Manning, the alleged leaker to WikiLeaks. And a lot of Bradley Manning supporters didn't like it.
They hacked a website putting a story that Tupac and Biggie had kind of escaped the world of celebrity fame and attention and retired quietly and discreetly in New Zealand.
Lulzsec, when they attacked PBS, that gave me the creeps. As a journalist, I'm not too thrilled with the idea of someone judging that we don't like you to write that, we don't like your reporting, so we're going to shut down your website. I'm uncomfortable with that. It could be me, and I could be writing something about a group that they didn't like, and I'm happy to sit and talk with them about it, but don't shut my website down.
This is obviously about freedom of speech, so attacking the press would be would sort of be a bit of a contradiction. So people always said, well, you shouldn't do that. And obviously Lulzsec had a completely different agenda, so they had no problem with it.
Activism started to become sort of, I would say, almost more nasty, using, sort of more no-holds-barred kind of attacks, sort of more vicious attacks.
They sort of saw themselves as going out there, breaking into anything, everything, governments, corporations, police departments, largely for the same reasons Anonymous would. They went after Arizona for immigration policy. 50-day run, causing mayhem, havoc, and then ended it.
The computer hacking group, Lult Security, has announced its disbanding, saying it had achieved its mission to disrupt government and corporate organizations for fun.
I call this whole thing the rise of the chaotic actor. And chaotic could be chaotic good, neutral, or evil. You know, if you go back to the old Dungeons and Dragons charts. And some people see Anon-Ops initially, let's stick with Anonymous, as chaotic good. They saw Operation Payback, or they saw attacking Scientology, and they say that's good. It's like Robin Hood, right? Chaotic good. Outside the system, but doing something good. Other people saw Anon as chaotic evil, like the Joker. They just want to see the world burn and doing potentially irreparable damage. And the truth is, yes, it's the entire column of chaotic. I'm actually a little less concerned about some of the things Lulzsek's done and more concerned about the next generation of Lulzsek, the next turn of the crank of who takes it further or is more aggressive. Whoever fights monsters, you know, should see to it they don't themselves become one.
Really, as powerful as they seem to be, Lulzsek and Anonymous are really small potatoes compared to the bigger operations that are going on that we don't hear about, maybe operations funded by government.
16 people were arrested today, but dozens of FBI agents targeted alleged members of the loose-knit hacking group. Armed with search warrants, agents hit 6 homes in New York, along with locations across the country.
The people arrested yesterday were suspected of attacking PayPal's website after the company shut off payments to WikiLeaks.
Defenders of the hackers say they're merely engaged in civil protest, but FBI officials worry the disruptive cyber attacks could move in a more dangerous direction.
So the FBI shows up at 6 in the morning and it was really obnoxious. And I remember being frustrated and angry because there was nothing that I had done that would have justified an FBI search warrant.
They came and guns blazing, all this other good stuff, busted down the door. I immediately just dropped down to the floor, 180, didn't want nothing. I wasn't trying to fight nobody.
Even if you accept what the government is saying is true, what is important is that people are participating in the process. It is very much the process. It is sitting in a counter in Selma, Alabama, 500 Freedom Riders refusing to allow people to go and sit in at a segregated lunch counter. They write books about that stuff. It is demonstrating at a street corner saying no to a war. It's just a different, it's just a different vehicle. It's the same result.
There's always going to be legal consequence when you decide to break the law. That comes with the territory. And it would be naive not to expect that. The question is whether the punishment will be proportional to the crime. And I suspect it might not be. People will be watching very closely to see how these cases proceed, on what grounds, and whether there's any room during the trials to think, especially of the denial of service attacks, as a legitimate form of protest. So much of our lives are now configured, at least in part, on the internet. So we better start thinking about how we claim parts of the internet as spaces that we can also protest in.
There is a certain online culture that believes in certain values, like freedom of expression. They're against corruption. They're against governments controlling their citizens. And when they see those values harmed in some way by some organization, the hacktivists strike back.
I don't think this whole issue is a technical hacking thing. This is more about human philosophy and psychology. What's motivating us? Why is there so much unrest or disenfranchisement or anger that would lead people to want to take matters in their own hands and join these? Whether you think it's bad or not is irrelevant. It's not going away. The part of me that likes the ability to have rapid destabilization and change loves this. The part that knows how powerful it is means it's a force multiplier for good or for evil. And how that power is wielded and how we want to self-regulate is going to be the most deciding factor in if this is a menace or a benefit. I certainly don't think most of the conversations in law enforcement or the government are informed enough to know how to deal with this.
I suppose the question you really want to ask is, would I do it again? And honestly, after thinking about it, I felt that I did what was right. I had a belief, I still do, that what I did was the right thing, and hopefully someone got some good out of it. You know, I'd love to think that maybe I stopped someone from joining a cult, you know. Probably wouldn't tell on myself next time, but, you know, I don't think I would have changed a single thing other than the whole talking to the FBI thing.
Just that little
Yeah, just the little detail that kind of changed everything, yeah.
I'm angry. Occasionally I have small breakdown moments of terror. But I haven't stopped believing what I believed. I haven't stopped wanting to fight. I haven't stopped caring.
Show me what democracy looks like! Show me what democracy looks like!
There's a lot of people in Anonymous who feel very deeply and very sincerely about their contribution towards democracy around the world. And I think that's one of the main things that I'm most proud of about Anonymous. There are things that I'm not proud of about Anonymous, but we stand against censorship and we stand against oppressive governments, even our own. It's a very noble thing.
And history teaches us that change simply doesn't come with flowers. It doesn't work. No? If they say I'm a criminal, damn, well, then I will be one.
I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican or an independent or if you like Ron Paul or if you worship pigeons or Scientology or if you're Catholic or atheist or Methodist. I don't care about that. Your opinion matters. I don't care if I disagree with it. I don't care if I hate your guts. Your opinion matters.